Assalamu alaikum and Ramadan Mubarak. With the name of Allah, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, we bear witness that there is but one God, and we bear witness that Mohammed, peace and blessings be upon him, is his servant and his messenger. We thank Allah for our life, and we thank Allah for our presence together, although we're not physically in the same place. Allah has blessed us with this technology at this time, such that we can still meet and we can still come together, and we're thankful to Allah for that. I'm personally thankful for this invitation to share my thoughts on the Prophet and his leadership with the believers this Ramadan. And I trust Allah with that He will guide my words, and I trust Him with my life, and I trust Him with our delivery towards the goal that we're working. So even though this is a speech and a series of speeches, or a presentation and a series of presentations, we know that all of us in our community are working towards the same goal, and that is to establish a model community here amongst African American Muslims. Alhamdulillah. So the topic that we were all asked to speak on for this presentation, well, before I actually get started on that, I do want to give you some guidance on how to interact with or participate in this presentation. I always say I'm not a speaker, I'm not a presenter. Some people will say, well, no, you are. So I do know that I stand before people and I speak, but I don't do it because I'm good at it. I do it because when I believe Allah wants me to do it, then I do it. So there may be times when it's not, lots of flashing lights and shiny things. My aim is to be honest. My aim is to help. And those are the things that I want you to look for when I'm speaking today. Today, I don't have a slideshow or anything for you to look at other than a picture of nature. I actually encourage you to look, if you have some nature around you, to look outside at that. Like if you have some trees, anything that's alive, look at that. But if you don't, then I've provided you with a picture that you can look at as well. So with that said, my hope is that you can look at that, and as you listen, I want you to listen with your consciousness. There are going to be some things that I say that may take a while to digest. And I hope that you don't just repel them right off the bat. I hope that you think about them, you ask questions about them, you reflect on them, but mostly take it in the spirit with which I'm offering, which is helping us to move closer to the goal that we're all working so diligently for. How the Prophet led. So when we think about this question, or the question that this theme poses, the normal way we might go about this, like if we wanted to think about how someone led, or even how I've heard people approach the question of the Prophet being a leader and what we can learn from it. One of the first things we might do is we might think of the different roles that we consider leadership. Like we might say, okay, he was a husband, he was a father, a leader in the home. He was a businessman. He was a military leader. He was a political leader, religious leader. He was a teacher. So we think about these roles, and then we also think about the Prophet within these roles. And then we say, well, how good of a job did he do in those roles? And of course, because he's the Prophet, he did excellent job. But we kind of feel like we're missing something though, it's like there's something more. So what we quickly realize is that these leadership roles are too small to actually see what type of leader the Prophet is, and how he leads. So what I say to begin, or to say at the beginning of this presentation, is that the Prophet leads human life. So he leads a vibrant human life. Our normal perspective of leadership, we unconsciously have it in our mind that leadership is like a binary concept where you have the leader and you have the followers. And in our lives, we all try to be the leader because no one wants to be on the bottom. And we say, no, we don't say that. Yes, we do. You know, in class, you get good grades because you don't want to be not at the top of your class. In your company, you want to be the CEO and not the person who's just working on the floor. So we're all sensitized to see leadership as this binary where we don't say anything, but everybody wants to get at the top because it's no fun being on the bottom. But that's not how the Prophet led. The Prophet didn't lead in a binary concept. He led human life. He led for real. So the Prophet, he leads vibrant human life. He leads the diverse human life, the intricately social human life, the ever-expanding and social connections human life, and the ever-growing in the search for new sciences and the development of the established sciences human life. And what's so amazing about Prophet Muhammad's leadership is that the biggest expression or the moment of when his leadership is the biggest, he's not even here. He's not even here. Like right now, at this moment, Al-Islam is growing faster than than the believers in his time could have ever known. So his leadership is at its widest, its fullest, and he's not here. So this definitely challenges for us our own perceptions of leadership. And I want to pause here because we have this amazing ability in this community, but I think it is something that we're not really aware of that we have. And it comes from Imam Muhammad's language, and it comes from our experience and being able to develop with and in that language. And we wonder why, you know, when Imam Muhammad teaches us something and then someone else teaches on the same topic and we're like, wow, you know, Imam Muhammad really, he did that topic justice. Whereas this other person, I mean, they said all the right things, but it was missing something. And what I like to say about that is that where other people give you two-dimensional pictures, you know, they just give you the flat picture, almost like an Egyptian hieroglyph, where you have the shoulders and everything all facing the front. Imam Muhammad will give you a real life rendition of what he's talking about. And when we're thinking about the Prophet, there's no way to distill him down to a flat, okay, this is him right here. So the best thing we can do is take a look at him in the moment, because he's leading us today. His leadership is still real. It's active now. And to look at our own desire and to see how his leadership is the key to us getting from our essence as a community, as individuals, to our excellence as a community. So I want us to take a look at some ideas that are distinctly in our history and in our here and now. And then we'll look at how the Prophet's leadership is integral to that. So when we're thinking about our excellence, our goal, and it located in our historical reality, I think everybody can relate to the phrase, I can stand on the top of the world and I can say the most beautiful people, the most beautiful nation is in the wilderness of North America. So we have in our mind and in our hearts this desire, and it is confirmed by what Allah says in the Quran, you are the best of people, evolved for the good of all mankind. So we know that that is our goal, that is what we're working towards. And we have an excellent starting point. And I think it is summed up really well in a quote that I pulled actually from an email that was sent to me. Imam Sahir sent me a promotion for a new book coming out, commentary on selected verses of the Holy Quran. And in it, the person who wrote the description of, just kind of telling us what the book is about, they included what I felt was a snapshot of what really what describes the essence of our community today. And I'm going to read that. So the quote is, all that he, Imam Mohammed, hoped for could not be completely fulfilled within the span of his earthly life. In physical form, he is no more. Yet the vitality of his spirit and the wisdom and guidance of his teachings are very much alive. Within his body of knowledge, there is an essence, a potency, a potential that is constantly unfolding within and about those who love him the most. The spirit of his determination, his courage, his hopes, his yearnings are alive in us. Insha'Allah, this spirit will live on for generations to come. So in our community, we have this, it's almost like this energy that is just wanting to be released, but it needs help to get from essence to excellence. And that's where leadership comes in. That's why we care about leadership. That's why historically people have cared about leadership. They say, okay, we know we can accomplish things together. So let us bring everyone together, let us manage them, and let us guide them to a new reality so that they can get the most of themselves. And we're working with each other using a lot of leadership plans and leadership designs, consciously and unconsciously, to help get the best from each other. But what I think is happening around the country is that we are working really, really hard. Everyone is working really, really hard. But we keep running up against almost like an invisible brick wall, where we still feel like our potential, our essence is not really able to stretch out and reach towards excellence. It's like something is blocking us. And I believe it's our perception of leadership. So it's with urgency that we must establish the Prophet's leadership model in our community. But how? How can we establish this in our community? And I think the first thing is to see the key feature of the Prophet's leadership. Leadership is movement with a direction. So we're really looking at that direction. So where is the Prophet taking us? And for us as Muslims, that's seen in our Qibla. And we know that in the story, in the history of the Prophet, the Qibla was actually in two directions. First, we faced Jerusalem. And then after Allah guided the Prophet, we turned to face Mecca and to face the Kaaba. And it is in that action that we see the Prophet's leadership. That in our desire to help human life, we try to put on human life a harness, something that worked in the past that could help bring the best out of them. But the Prophet saw, no, we cannot devote ourselves to structures. We cannot, no matter what their purpose was. The kingdom in Jerusalem was beautiful. But for this community that's growing and it has a potential that's just, it can't be directed by humans, it has to be guided by God. So when we have to direct our conscious efforts, we have to not focus on structures, but we have to focus on the essence of human life. And Imam Mohammed spoke to this. In his address called Great Aspirations, he says, God turned us to the primary social unit of life. Guard that, protect that, orientate yourself upon that, not upon political order. For Solomon's temple represented a governmental order. So what will hold you all together and give you equal identity in it, give you all equal stature in it, is the care for the primary social unit of life. And he goes on to say, now Muslims are told in our holy book that God has given us security. And he goes on to say, keep your eyes on the need of the social unit. Orientate your whole life for the good of the social unit. not for a political order that seeks perpetual life at the expense of human life, but a human order that will make material life conform to what is best for the human person. So the key to the Prophet's leadership being established in our life is that we have to be able to see when we have erected with our honest efforts. Now, we were praying, the believers were praying, they were making salat, but their focus point needed to be shifted from an old view of a political order to one that opens it up for all human life. So what does that look like, though? What does that look like? What are we supposed to do? And I offer us to help us to see that. I asked us to reflect on the moment in which we could see ourselves for the first time independently of Imam Mohammed. After Imam Muhammad's passing, we were faced with a choice of qiblats. We had grown in knowledge since our development from the Nation of Islam, and we had learned the science of leadership from the world, and we had each developed extensive knowledge, some in interfaith work, others in Islamic knowledge, others in business, others in politics, others in fashion and education culture, and much, much more. And although we were personally guided by one from amongst us to follow the Prophet when he directed us to face the Kaaba, our first act on our own was to have the vocabulary of al-Islam and the rituals, but we prayed towards Jerusalem. In 2008, we had a choice. We could either use our political structures and our business structures and our knowledge structures to aid a family, the primary social unit of life. This family at its heart was good, but just was having some growing pains with their identity. They stood on a precipice of a very bad deed, and they were being challenged by the change in times to develop into a fuller and more human view of themselves. They needed help that only a community could offer. But interestingly enough, it was precisely because they were a family that they were not given the dedicated attention that structures in our community got, like banquets, fundraisers, and knowledge projects. They have had our undivided attention almost every day for our whole lives. When we look at the Prophet's leadership, his leadership does not try to harness our potential. He doesn't look at the believers and say, like, well, what can I get done with this group? His leadership frees our potential so that it will reach its excellence. How does he lead when he is not even physically among us? He leads through his model. His love for the common human person resonates through history. His absolute discipline to never take advantage of people and to take special care of people who have been oppressed in their human identity. The Prophet does not obstruct the view of our human life. He clarifies it. He helped a family. He helped a family. A lot of times we see his leadership after it reached its excellence. But at its very core, he helped a family. He helped a family that had the responsibility for the symbol of unity for all mankind, while they were yet very insecure in their human identity and could only stand up in their pride as a family noble above everyone else. He led this family, his family. He led them to see the beautiful model that God has chosen them to share with the world because of their close relationship with the house for all mankind. He showed them that they should not harness the power of the people by filling the Kaaba with idols and forcing the people to be humiliated. Can we follow his model? Can we help a family that holds the key to our passage from being organized around our local knowledges to being united around what makes us a community? And I offer that to us when we're reflecting on how the prophet leads, actually. I see it in the present tense. He guides us to change and have faith from just tending to structures, tending to, this event and that event. It's not that we don't do it, but our goal as Muslims, our Qibla, we protect, we preserve the family. And I want us to think too that this is not about just this one family, but it's representative across the country, because we oftentimes think of community as something that children need, babies and, children going to school. Adults need community. Adults need development. And really, the family births men and women into the community, and is the community's responsibility to help them to develop through all phases of their identity. So we have a responsibility to turn to the families in our community and help them, walk with them, lead them, like the prophet did with his family. It's so interesting. I could almost imagine some of us, if we were in the prophet's time, you got a mission, you got a special mission, you've been chosen, you're like, yeah, you're feeling kind of special. You immigrate from your home, like, yeah, they weren't treating me right, no way. You get to Medina, you're like, okay, and Allah says, all right, you need to have a plan for your life, a plan to be established. And you're facing, Jerusalem, somewhere far away, you're like, okay, we can do that. And then Allah tells you that your destiny is actually to turn around and go back and work with your family. The very family that is not listening to you, is trying to fight and kill you in his situation. So I'm asking us, in our awareness as a people, we've learned and we've come in contact with many knowledge spaces. And we've learned many beautiful things. But I believe we should turn from Jerusalem, where we focus on an order, a structure that's already determined, and we work to get our community to, pick up their feet and do, raise this or build that, but actually tend to the family and to see our success as leaders, not in a building that you built. Not that that's not good, but for a Muslim leader, I should be able to see the efficacy of your leadership in my own home. I should see my family healthy. I shouldn't see my children going to the streets. And if it's happening, then we have to go back to the drawing board and work and push and protect the family. Now we need to do this, inshallah, we will, for all families. But whenever we get the courage and whenever we really want our unity, we have to help the family that unites all of these families find their true, beautiful identity as being custodians of the Kaaba, that people from all over the world come to see. This is the beginning of the model community. Wow. But we can't have that unless we help a family and help families. And we see that the Prophet's leadership was about that primary social unit of life, helping it come from that essence of being a family to the excellence of supporting a strong, vibrant model community. And Assalamu alaikum. that is the end of my presentation. And if there are any questions that you have, I can take them now. Okay, so I see the first question here is how can we get the recording? So I will let, I think Sister Coffee,
Yes.
answer that question. Okay.
Assalamualaikum. We will have the recording available on our YouTube channel, the Nation's Mosque, Masjid Mohammed, and actually, if you're on Facebook right after the event, it always uploads to Facebook as well, automatically.
Okay, so the next question here is how important is it to build strong family ties through Islam? I think that that is the most important thing. Islam is about community life. Community life is family life. And everything else is just an extension of that social unit. So we really, it's actually, it's so interesting and it's so beautiful to be a part of this community, a part of our history, because it has been so long since a people have gone through this stage of their development. Like all the cultures that we see now, this happened so long ago, they forgot. And in some cases, that's not good because they're kind of sliding. But we're actually watching a social community like be born right before our eyes. And first, we come to knowledge of self with respect to the Creator. And in our history, we know that being forced to work on plantations, given to us, and what was given to us was a false idea of ourselves and a false idea of our relationship to our Creator. Thank Allah, we overcame that circumstance. Still, we did not have strong families. We had, centuries of slavery where we could not marry and establish just the basic family connection of mother, father, child. We, alhamdulillah, going along the family line, and just kind of zooming up to today, because I know my time is not forever. One of the things I just have to really give a shout out to this generation. Some people call them youth, some people call them young adults. I call them adults, but they're about, I guess, between the early 20s to maybe early 40s or maybe late 30s. One of the things about this generation is that they are so serious about their marriages. Like they love their families, they love their children, and it is clear that they see themselves in this family unit. And what I see is that they need a community that's protecting them and helping them to develop their identities, because their identities don't stop developing after they get married. They actually just start, in the community space. And there has to be a community that's helping them to develop that identity from stage to stage. So I see another question. So I'm gonna say there for that one, because I can go on for that. But yes, so family, I guess my presentation, if I could sum it up, I'm encouraging us to see leadership not in dead things. A lot of times we think of leadership as management. That's really all it is. It's like management, command control. That's okay if you're like organizing a box of marbles, but that's terrible for people. How can we manage human life and at the same time tell people to turn to their guardian Lord? Like, who do they listen to? And why would you sign up to do such a thing when you ask them to turn to their guardian Lord for guidance, yet we manage their lives? But that's the way the world is set up. It's designed so that if people are not connected with their value, you can group them and get some kind of use out of them. But we cannot use these dead things, not and have the prophet's leadership in our eyes. We can't be a manager of human life. We have to be a protector and a guide of human life. Yes, let me scroll down here. Yes, so I see a question here. And I think everyone can see the questions, I think, but just in case, the question is, can you touch on the role of the father and the mother in the family life and the importance of these concepts or qualities in community? And then also there's a question down here about male leadership versus female leadership. So they may end up being tied into the same question. I think one of the things that's interesting is that okay, so it goes back to we want to harness the beauty of our language. So in most people's discussion and perception of things, everything is flat. You know, mother and father and children are just kind of like, okay, this is what the mother does, this is what the father does. All right, now everybody do what you're supposed to do. But in Al-Islam and in Imam Muhammad's language, which gives us this full vision, it has a depth. Everything in his language has an essence and an excellence. So what starts off as mother and father in the home, or really, it's not really mother and father, it is mother and father to the children. But together, really what you're looking at is a pair. You're looking at husband and wife, and they're half of each other. But the development piece, which is what the community is supposed to assist with this birth, you know, make sure that this birth happens. Our community the families in our community should be constantly birthing sons and daughters into the community. We need sons and daughters constantly. Why do we need sons? When you look at the prophets, how did they get their community from one point to the next? It was through the son. This thinker that seeks God to guide the thoughts and take it to the destiny, which is, we know, our Qibla. But if the identity doesn't develop beyond just being in the home, then we never produce a leader or leaders. We need leaders all over the place with this particular type of having this sensitivity. And then we need daughters. We need people who their very essence has the ability to hold an entire community together. And I was reflecting in one of the classes that I was teaching. Women have this ability to turn just any random person in the society to a sister for life. Like, it's a bond so strong, like you couldn't take a jackhammer and break it. So it's like they have this natural ability that they can just bring what was just, oh, assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam, to you like, wait, y'all really sisters, right? So we have to have daughters being birthed from the unions. And you're like, well, that will happen naturally. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Without the proper guidance and the circumstance, these abilities could be misdirected, and our sons and our daughters are caught in the birth canal, and we don't have any leaders, and we don't have a way to continue our community. So it's necessary to help them transition from a role that only gives them reality in their own home. But we're not animals. We're not, that's not the only thing God made us for. I mean, birds go out and find food for their children. You know, they stay together for life, some of them. We were made with 7 levels above us. But the thing is, adults can't really begin to ascend until they get married, or until they have in their heart an appreciation and respect for the marriage bond. And then the community can start working with you, walking you up from Adam to Prophet Jesus, inshallah, all the way up to the Prophet. Why do we have the Prophet's model if we can't see it? So it's these roles, they're moving and developing. So what starts as a mother and a father will emerge as a daughter and a son in the community. Because you think about a community as ummah, it's mother. So you never get bigger than your mother. So I may be 50, 60, 70 years old, but no matter where I go, I'm still child of the ummah, and the ummah is still responsible to nurture me and my identity every moment that I'm here. And just to make sure if I didn't answer this one, so male leadership versus female leadership, I think the first thing about that would be men and women are not rivals, they're pairs. And a lot of times we're given language that unconsciously positions us to challenge each other, one up each other, when really we're supposed to be pairs. There's only one leadership. So there's really no male or female leadership. It's leadership. And it may look different depending upon what the environmental pressures say. Like in Al-Islam, we know that every Muslim member has to be able to be an imam. You've got to say your sunnah prayers. You can't have the official imam. Actually, I don't think there is such a thing as an official imam. In Al-Islam, there's no priesthood. So everyone in the community is responsible for making sure we are successful. And everyone knows the cues we look for when they have to step up. What happens? What are the signs? So if I look around and there isn't a male to lead, then I'll lead, right? It'll be the sisters and we'll lead, and we know how. And even when the imam is standing in front, he's not leading us in anything we don't know. He's leading us in everything we do know. He's leading us in from the same book that we are to memorize. And we even are like, we can say, subhanallah, Allahu Akbar, if he deviates or makes a mistake. So this idea that there's a tension and a antagonistic relationship between leaders and the followers, and thereby we have to promote those who've been oppressed to positions of leadership in an act of liberation, that kind of thinking for an Islamic community, it doesn't have a place if we're actually following the Prophet's model, because there is no oppression. Leadership doesn't mean that there's any oppression going on. But in other spaces, that's normally the case. But in Al-Islam, male and female are pairs. They're not rivals. And therefore, any leadership is everyone's leadership. It doesn't have to be male or female. Now, people may ask, why is the male standing out in front? Maybe that might be what's bothering people from other communities. Like, why is he always in the front? Why are the sisters in the back? To me, what I believe is like what I see when I see the male standing in front, it's a symbol of a community that is whole. A lot of times the women will be more spiritual than the men. And you may have all these sisters reading Quran and working together, but the brother may be out just working a job, right? He's never able to wake up for Fajr. He's never able to, read Quran with you. So our community is just a dream. It's just a dream. It doesn't have resources. It doesn't have the whole community in it. But when we've developed enough to have a male who is spiritually balanced, he's still a male. He still goes out and he tackles the resources and brings home the money. He's not letting up on any of that, but he's spiritually balanced as well. That is a sign of a community that is healthy and progressing, because normally a sign of a community that's not is that you'll have the women doing this and doing that, but the men will be leaning heavily on one side. Either they're extremely spiritual and they haven't earned $1 in the past 3 months, or they're just caught up drowning in the material and they never have time for anything spiritual. But to have a man lead in the community, the leadership is spiritual leadership, is a beautiful message that it's beautiful to see the male standing up front. Beautiful, it's a beautiful sign. And what things can we focus on now using the Prophet's leadership to establish a better way of life for the community as a whole? I think that the opportunity that Allah has given us through sending us all back home to our families is a good place to start. To really begin to see, how can we support families? How can we help members in our community to grow in their identities? What can we do in our spaces? How can we reorganize to support the family? And I believe that's a message that Allah is sending to the entire world. Right now, businesses that are not, traditionally the business life is put together to be a parasite for the family. They divide the family up into generations so that you feel more close to the 1 million 16-year-olds in the world than you do to your own mother, which makes no sense because you've never met the 1 million other 16-year-olds in the world. The only thing you all have in common is undeveloped awareness and appetites. So this generation thing is for commercial life. It's easy to market to you when you identify as a generation instead of a family. So we get wiped out. We had been wiped out day in and day out. Then they appeal to the mothers of certain ages and the fathers, and they just kind of pick us apart. But Allah said, no more. No more. Now, anything that wants to go forward in this time, they've got to find a way to serve the entire family. You can't separate them out. You've got to serve the entire family. And those institutions that do serve the entire family, they have more business than they know what to do with. They need help. But those businesses that relied on a market of 35 to 41-year-olds, steadily coming in every day without their family, their businesses are hobbling. They're not successful. So for us, we should take this as a message of guidance. Whatever we have, no matter how big or how small it is, make sure it supports the family, and not in just the smallest way where like, okay, well, I'll bring some gifts for the children. Make sure it supports the whole family, the mother and the father. Most importantly, the mother and the father will take care of the children, but take care of the mother and the father. See what they need. Offer them a protective space from this crazy culture. Support them. And I can't say exactly what it will look like because Allah has given us each different gifts. But I think if we challenge ourselves to just ask ourselves this question whenever we're building or planning: am I focusing on trying to make people conform to a structure? Or am I focusing on making sure that I'm consistently seeing people grow? And then they can produce their own structures. And that might help us see what we can do. So whenever we approach people, do we free them up or do we lock them up, or harness their potential rather? We put a harness on them to drive our little buggy, no matter how noble the buggy may be. So just look and see, are we fighting for structures, or are we fighting for the development of human life? Okay, yes. Yes, so this looks like there's some questions from Facebook as well. And oh, there's a question in the chat.
Assalamu alaikum. Do you want me to read off the questions from Facebook?
Yes, that will do.
Okay, I'm gonna start with one. How should we address polygamy in the community of Imam Muhammad? And what role should the women and men of the community play in either entertaining or not entertaining this concept?
Okay. I think as a practice, Allah has laid out that this is an option. So when we look across the community, to see it is not necessarily a mark of like a bad mark on our community. Now those who do research and they may see that, wow, okay, the families are not really being supported, or this is not really the proper context for that, that would be a different conversation. But I think there's a lot to discuss there, and I have some thoughts, but it would be an entirely different. Let me put it this way. I'm going to say this and think on it. This is going to take a minute to think on. I don't believe that the wisdom from polygamy is two-dimensional. Allah tells us about the allowance for a man to have 4 wives, but then it's also clear that it's encouraged that you would stick with one. One of the things I was reflecting on was how that 4 wives may not necessarily be just 4 separate people, but it could be a development in your understanding of what it means to be a wife. And I'll leave that there because I don't have my presentation out, and inshallah I'll write on that since I said it. But I believe that there's guidance beyond just physically a relationship with someone that guides us even to the point that I was saying earlier of identities that have to be developed. Anyone who's been married for any length of time knows that we change. When you're in a relationship, your identities change. And that 4-wife allowance might not actually be horizontal. It might be vertical, where both the husband and the wife are changing. Still one married couple, but they're moving into new spaces and new awarenesses, becoming more than just responsible for their family, but responsible for their city, responsible for their neighborhood. Which, as a wife, your sensitivities and your identity is going to have to grow. And then sometimes they even say, like in these movies, when the husband is out and he's got a responsibility that's big, it's like, well, I feel like that's his other wife. So maybe there's wisdom in the concept of polygamy. And maybe if we looked at the wisdom, and if there's any abuse of the allowance, maybe the wisdom might be the answer for that, and help people to focus and develop the relationships they already have instead of looking for new ones if it's not really what is the appropriate thing for them to do.
Okay, I have two more.
Mm-hmm.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. What do you see as the biggest challenges in our unity into being inspired together as one united ummah?
We got to face the same Qibla. Right now, we don't have the same Qibla. Everyone, Imam Mohammed said leadership is local. But he didn't say the Qibla was local. And I think we kind of confuse that. Where we stand is in our local spaces, but as Allah tells us, wheresoever you are, turn your faces to that space that's going to unite you. So we took leadership as local, and now everyone is trying to develop their identity, some uniqueness. And it's not without its rewards, but it doesn't unite us. We spend most of our time on things that make us unique, and almost none to the degree that we spend on, other things that are not as important as this, on what actually makes us a community, and that's respect for human value. Do we constantly and consistently come together on that? Not in abstract ways, in real ways, holding each other accountable. Like, hey, that sister was treated bad yesterday, unacceptable, or you can't talk to the brother like that. Like, having that brings us together. So having the same Qibla will be what unites us, because we can't, and I think unity too is interesting. It's like we want to see everyone in the same room. That's not unity right now, or when it becomes time for prayer. I don't know what people in Spain are doing who are Muslim. I don't even know what the people in my city are doing who are Muslim. I assume they're about to say prayer. But what unites us, it's not that I see them or they're all in my room. They are all facing the Qibla. And I don't have to know exactly that they're facing it. I'll know in Hajj, but it's our destiny and what we work for that unites us, not who's all sitting in the same room. And sometimes in that process of unity, it feels like we're tearing apart. Like there are people who really see unity as superficial. And when you got to challenge someone, they're like, why are you challenging the unity? And like, you don't know, I am shoring up the unity right now, because when we look at the Prophet's example, when he left Mecca, it looked like he was destroying the unity, messing up everything. No, he actually shored it up and strengthened it because he stood on principle. So when we stand on principle, something that's unique, no matter what Allah has blessed me with is resources in my local area, and we consistently, daily do all of our activities with respect for that in our life, we will be united, no matter what we do and how we do it, as long as we do that. And I see a question here that I missed. It was earlier. It says, most people think of a family as just those living under their roof, and possibly the family of their childhood if they have any time or resources left. How does this definition compare with their use of the term? So I think that's, I think that idea is where it starts. And like the actual nuclear, as they call it, family, that's where the other identities emerge from. So it's the same. It's just that everything is essence to excellence. So whenever we're looking at anything, especially in Imam Muhammad's language, nothing is just stagnant and flat. So when we look at that family, press play, boom, it's a community. It's automatic. It's always moving towards a community. Even if we're not aware of it, it's moving towards the community. So it's still the same thing. It's just that's pausing time for a minute and just seeing ourselves as this little family. And I guess that's the challenge, is that we're always looking at our family through the rear view mirror. But community life excellence asks you to turn around and sit in the driver's seat instead of look in the rearview mirror at my family, like everything that's happened in the past, but to recognize that I can make choices to be responsible, to make relationships, to grow in community life, and to channel that so that we can get to where we're heading.
Okay. We do have one more question that's offline, Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
There is an excellent book called Male versus Man by Dondre Whitfield. It is an excellent book addressing the need for men to train males so they can create more men to guide and lead society. It also speaks to men teaching girls what to look for in a mate. What do you believe is happening with the men in our community when we have so many unwed sisters, and so little respect or concern for marriage?
I think that the reason we don't have the men is because we don't have a community. A community would birth and make sure there are men, but there's not. We've got single families trying to, I guess something we have to, because everything is connected, to just kind of, I don't know, if anyone who has children and they're older than 12 knows the angst of trying to just get a child to live to be old enough to get married. And when they're out there, they are by themselves. So all of our community this and community that, they are out there fighting a culture that is pernicious and is just deadly accurate with its schemes, just wiping out our children with, just dead on arrival, like no chance. And we've got families that are by themselves trying to fight this. And I think that's important to look at. Like, we can't even get to a man who's bumping around the community, maybe not married. I would like to just see a child live to see a young adult. I would like to see that. And I think if we begin to really like as a masjid community to think in those terms, like to understand that these families are fighting those battles every day, and that we are listening to those parents, and that we use everything in our power, and not just programs and things like that. Living together, going out there and finding them, bringing them back, finding them again, bringing them back, struggling with them. And what we see is that the man and the woman that we want is really the child right now. But our children are not raised in this community. They are not raised. Many of them go, it's like a foster care. We don't have the community institutions for them. They go and they spend all their life being raised in a school, picked on for being Muslim, scarf snatched off, all of this. And then when they get older, we ask them to show up at the masjid so they can donate a few dollars. No talk of the struggles that they went through. No talk of, who was there to comfort me. I'm crying because someone, snatched my scarf off or made fun of my name. Where was the community? Where was the community? So when they become adults, it's almost like a mother or a father that's been MIA, and now that the child is grown and has resources, everybody wants to be a part of their life now. if we want men and we want women, we've got to make sure we raise them up. And other than that, like if we didn't put it there, it ain't gonna be there. It's not gonna be there.
Let me see. We have one last question that we skipped actually on the chat. How can we institutionalize Imam Muhammad's tafsir? We only have enough time. I think it's like 2 more questions of Q&A. I'm not sure if you had, I don't want to usurp your time. So this question we skipped. I wanted to make sure that we answered it. But if you have time, I think it's 2 more questions inside of the actual question, the Q&A.
Yes, yeah, I have time, so it's okay.
Okay.
Can you ask the question one more time?
Sure. How can we institutionalize Imam Muhammad's tafsir?
I think again, we got to start seeing the people ahead of the structures. There are ways you can institutionalize it. You can, bring people together and make agreements about how we will teach it and disseminate it. But that will last only as long as you've got people who are willing to do that. Imam Muhammad's language and his tafsir is meant to be lived. And that's how we preserve it. And then when we live it, by design, it is everywhere. Just like, for example, like I like the metaphor, the language of Imam Muhammad, because it really puts into perspective what our responsibility is if we want to see it disseminated and circling and cycling through the community. The thing about a language is that you've got to teach it to people. And you can't teach it in artificial circumstances and say, oh, we're successful. It has to be their mother tongue. And then for it to be their mother tongue, they have to hear mama speaking it, daddy speaking it. If there's instructions on my street, it's in that language. If, I go to school everywhere, it's designed according to that language and that logic. When I go to the store, all the labels are in that language. When I sit down and write a note, it's in that language. When I think, imagine, and plan, it's in that language. And by design, the language is growing and growing and growing. And there's no need for us to artificially place it everywhere with an institution. Every institution they make will be in that language. It doesn't have to even be about specifically Imam Muhammad's language. Like right now we're using Zoom, and just by default, everything is in English. And we don't even really think about it. But once we can live this and make this the lifeblood of our community, then we won't have to worry about doing like what some parents do. They try to put the spinach on the pizza so the children will eat it. Like, we don't have to go through stuff like that. Like, how can we place Imam Muhammad's language in spaces to make sure it stays? No, we could boldly just set celery and everything all over the place because our community loves it. It's their mother food, their mother language, and they love it, they plant it, they grow it, they harvest it, they extend it, they study it, they write in it, think in it, sing in it, whatever. And I think they will put all the institutions together, and it will be common knowledge for them. It will not even be difficult, like writing a note in a particular language. It wouldn't be difficult, but we've got to make it the mother tongue. Now that there is a how to, and that will go towards us having a unity, because I think, truth be told, from 2008 to now, we've all tried to see if we can, contort ourselves to not have to deal with the issue, the elephant in the room, which is at any moment, Imam Muhammad's body of knowledge can be sold to anyone, just like Muhammad Ali's work. Everything you've got on YouTube can be erased. I don't even think like you can find, like I think like Prince or someone like that. they actually have the ability, and people will go out and go on the internet and make sure they pull down everything and channel it through one source so that the financial piece of it is maximized. So we don't really have any say right now over the lifeblood of this community. And it intersects with what I said earlier, is that the identity of the family has not been helped to grow. And as long as it's almost like the Quraysh and the Kaaba, and no one helped them to see that the real big value of the Kaaba. And it's integral. That's the key there, because we're not secure. And we've been living our lives for almost 12 years. You know, there are people who would have study groups out in the open and would be disseminating information openly about Imam Muhammad's language, but they're afraid that they might run amiss and get a court case or something like that, or that they can't technically do this. So, I mean, there's that piece that we need to handle, really. And then once that's done, then we can do all types of things to put in place an ecosystem of Imam Muhammad's language, just cycling through all parts of the community.
Okay, going back to the Q&A, I cleared out all the rest of the questions that we already answered. So then you have those 3 questions that are there.
Okay. All right. Is it important for Muslims to become more economically, culturally, spiritually bound to help the family? Yes. And I think too that because like, and the funny thing about it is we say help the family, but we're all a part of one too. So that help is like helping them to develop through their responsibility. Like, I'll give one example. Moving from just living on this animal level that our cultural spaces want us to live on, to actually being Adam. Many of us may not live like Adam, like on the road to Khalifa. Our identity hasn't even gotten to the first level, or it was on the first level, but it slipped somewhere. And what I mean by that is, we're like, well, I go out and I take care of my family, and I even have a business. But animals do that. Like, a wolf will go out and scope out the territory, claim it, and get the needs for its family and bring it back and dominate many, many spaces. But what a wolf does not do is manage to be responsible for the environment. People are caring about not just the taking from the land, but healing the land as well. So when we go out and we do business, are we just going out into the community for us to make some money? Or are we also thinking about the workers who work for us and making sure our policies are fair? Meaning, we take this model of business from the world, and then we partner it with the fact that Imam Muhammad said business is the way, but we never looked at his model for business. Many people who are in business, they forget to actually look at his model. He said, I'm not living in a more fancy, I'm staying in this simple house until the believers as a whole can afford houses that are bigger. But if we look at the people who are well-meaning and they're out making money, having businesses, a business is supposed to support a community, not a family. A job supports a family. So to be Adam, you take on responsibility for that whole human life. But right now, we're going out just like wolves. We scope out the largest territory we can and bring it back to this tiny, tiny, tiny unit. So now we're oppressing the environment just to lavish wealth on our family. And we pair what the world tells us business is, and we put a label on it and say, well, Imam Muhammad said do business. So this helping of developing that identity is helping them to see, like, as a family, as you're developing and you've got your home life together with what's happening in your home, and you're just about to step out here and begin to engage the world, let me give you guidance on how to make sure you can get to the next level and not slip on this one. How to make sure you enter as Adam and stay in your form and continue on through this progression. And I think, like, that's just an example to see how we may be making money, we may be on our face taking care of important things, but in reality, we have not really become responsible. We're not doing any more than what an animal may do. Go out and seize an opportunity and bring it home for their tiny, tiny unit. But to help that family realize a responsibility and an identity in the community and not just in the family. So we have to help our members to do that. And let me see here, there is another question. How can a Muslim be successful in relaying to other religions about following the path of the Prophet's leadership? I think it depends. So if you're talking to someone and they are, they're having an interfaith conversation with you and they're just wanting to know more about the Prophet as a reality in a diverse world, and they just want to know more about their brothers and sisters from another faith, then I think it's important to try to translate it into their terms, to let them see that our appreciation of the Prophet's leadership is almost identical to Christians' appreciation for Jesus Christ, and that he represented the best in us, this goodness, this, Christ nature, and that is our we hold ourselves accountable to always protect that and always preserve that. So I think from that perspective, we want to try to find ways to translate. If it's you really, really, really want to show them, then I think the best way to do that is to actually live it, to really, really strive. And even though you may not have a direct conversation with them, they will recognize that something is special about what you're doing, even if they're not able to identify it with Prophet Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him.
Okay, we have one final question off of Facebook.
Okay.
Should we move in the same communities to grow these languages and mindsets? I think she may have been talking about something that you addressed earlier.
Like move together, like live together?
Yes. That's what I get out of it. It just says, should we move in the same communities to grow these languages and mindsets?
Yeah. So I think definitely we should always seek each other, because we can't, having a community is really difficult when you're not really near anybody. But yeah, definitely we want to be together. And I think too, yes, like not even moving to the same space is enough, but like really living together, like, not necessarily living in the same house, but like you eat together, you laugh together, you cry together, everything, you don't just come together for the annual, black tie event, and the way you participate with your community is you buy a ticket and sell a ticket, that's not going to really develop. It should be like hot, you should be so close, you should be irritating each other. But in that space of irritation, it should be growth, But if we're not irritating each other on the daily, we're probably not close enough. I guess I'll put it that way.
Good answer. Okay. Oh gosh. Okay. All right. Final in the Q&A. Okay, everyone. We have to we have to move on. So this is going to be the last question that we have before we close out. would you agree that the development of a community begins with the knowledge of self and God?
Yes, yes, I definitely agree. And because that's the identity of the individual. Like the individual cannot get anything done if he or she does not have a knowledge of self and knowledge of the creator. And that we've seen has been the schemes to enslave people or to colonize people is to cut off that connection with identity of self and identity with their creator, and to reestablish that connection with something artificial. That way we then give our we turn to these other things to guide us, and we fear those things, whether it, you know, historically was a slave master, or even for many of us, we don't realize it, but jobs and things like that. We tremble before these things like they're idols, you know. So, but yes, we need people who are free, and you can only be free if you know who you are and you know that your creator intends to take you to an excellent destiny, and nothing is going to get in your way. So yeah, we can't have a community unless our members are dispositioned like that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sister Khadijah, for joining us and and sharing your insights. Really, I think that this was very, very beneficial for everyone involved here today. Just for everyone, we are going to have this available on our YouTube channel. If you go to Facebook right after this, you have access to this talk. Inshallah, we'll be able to come back and have you back again to have some more conversations with us.
All right. Well, I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. So, okay. So I'm going to move on for tomorrow. With our Ramadan session, we have Imam Abdullah Rashid. Imam Abdullah Rashid is an active imam, entrepreneur, and member of the Houston Islamic community in Texas. He's a dedicated student of the eminent scholar Imam Wardi Mohammed. May Allah be pleased with them. He is an associate imam at Masjid Wardi Mohammed in Masjid Al-Quran of Houston, and he is participating in the education and community building efforts. He's an entrepreneur who recently co-founded a crowdfunding platform that helped businesses raise over $450,000 in 3 months. He also recently co-founded with his wife a baby product company named Umi's and released a high-quality, eco-friendly diaper. The company shipped diapers to over 25 cities within 6 months of the launch. So tomorrow we will have Imam Abdullah Rashid join us. So 4 o'clock tomorrow, same time, same login information. Thank you for joining us, and please consider Masjid Muhammad for your charitable donations. Thank you again, Sister Khadijah, for joining us and taking your time out and even staying even later in answering questions. Everyone, I pray Allah that you all have a wonderful, wonderful day, and inshallah, we'll see you all tomorrow. Ramadan Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum.